All right, it's 2:30. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Hi! Hello, everybody. I'm Kara Donley. This is the Star Dispatch for February 24th, 2022, and I am live streaming with Strange New Pod for the beginning of Captain Picard Week. We're leading up to the new season of Star Trek Picard, and I am super excited to be the start of this week. It's great. We're going to have so much fun. There's going to be so many podcasts joining the festival. Come for the festival, yeah. So I am excited. I hope you tune in to everything that's going on. Subscribe to Strange New Pod in your favorite podcatcher app, and you'll be able to listen to everything that's going on for the week. So today I am going to talk about Picard and his experiences with children. It's been a lifelong lesson for him. We've seen him throughout the Next Generation dealing with children and being really uncomfortable around children. But then in Star Trek Picard, he's a much older version of himself. And we see those lifelong lessons kind of come to a head. What has he learned? Has he learned anything? I think he has. So, what I have done is I've gone through quite a number of episodes of TNG and Star Trek Picard and pulled out some examples that we can look at of just him interacting with kids, just so we can see the progression over time. The first thing I want to ask is, because I've heard this a lot on the internet, do you think of Captain Jean-Luc Picard as your space dad? I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that, like his lessons over the years as they watched TNG, whether they watched it as a kid or as an adult or both. um, he's very comforting. And I know Will Wheaton has said that on set, that Sir Patrick Stewart and the rest of the cast was his sort of adopted family. So it's kind of neat to think that we've adopted him as our space dad as well. Husher315 in chat says he's more like my space role model. I like that. And feels like Ben Sisko is my space dad more than anyone. Yep, he definitely had a lot more experiences with children than we got to see on screen. Geeks with Kids says, we all know that Draft's daddy is Spock. Ooh, that's a different kind of daddy, and I don't think we're going to go there today. So, just a little bit to get into this. The reason I'm interested in this topic is because I feel like I've had a very similar journey as Captain Picard over my life when it comes to children and just interacting with children and just being that awkward person at first. I grew up as an only child, so I didn't have siblings to bounce things off of. I lived in a neighborhood where I had like a little group of friends. My school was pretty big, but I was always the dorky kid. I mean, what Star Trek fan wasn't the dorky kid, right? So when I grew up a little bit and had to go into the workforce, one of my jobs was working the front desk at a library. And if you're anything like me, as a kid, you went to the library and you loved it. And so I loved being at the library. I loved everything the library stands for: free knowledge, getting to hang out there for free, reading all the books you want. But the thing about working at the library is you have to interact with the public. And the public means everybody, literally everybody. And that includes kids. And it helped me to put myself in their shoes to remember how much I loved the library when I was their age, to interact with them. The weirdest thing was going to Walmart and having a kid yell, "Hey, it's the library lady," from like across the aisle. You don't realize that people who work in libraries are going to be role models for little kids. But at first, it was very awkward. I had no idea how to talk to kids. I wanted to be just that person that, could make everybody smile as they're walking out the door, just a customer service thing. But with little kids, how do you do that? There was this giant disconnect for me. I didn't know how to talk to them or interact with them. But with practice over time, it just kind of came natural after a while. Granted, I was there for a few years, so I had a lot of practice, but you realize they just kind of want to be treated like little people. I mean, they are human beings. They just have a brain that's still developing. And going into that, when I was taking classes at my local community college, I had a psychology teacher that I really liked. I took psychology just as an elective, just for funsies. And this teacher, the way he taught just jived with me. I felt like I was learning everything. And, my brain was just light bulb moments left and right. So I took every class he taught. Every psych class that he taught, I took. Even if it was not relevant at all, I had electives to do, so why not? And one of those was child developmental psychology, which I learned how the brain develops, how the brain learns, how when we're born, or even before we're born, how the brain grows, and when you're born, how you learn, how it grows, the things that can go wrong, the things that can go right. And that was really just kind of a, I don't know, fortuitous experience, because at 27 years old, my dad remarried and I ended up with a little sister. So I got to be the oldest big sister ever. Unfortunately, we do live states away from each other, so I don't get to see her as often as I would like. But I feel like because of these little things in my past with, interacting with kids at the library, somewhere where we were both really excited to be, learning about literally how the brain develops for kids, I was able to not go into being a big sister in an awkward way. It was more of a really excited way. And I could play with her and I could kind of understand her, or at least try to understand her, even though I wasn't a parent. And I have no interest in being a parent. Parenting is so, so, so hard. And I just props to everybody who has kids, because it's just not for me. I am much more like Picard in the way that I would rather experience it from a distance. Just, yeah, I love my friends' kids and my little sister, but not for me. Husher315 in chat says, ton of work. Yes, ton of work. Ton of work. So that's my background, and why I think this is such an interesting topic. So I'm just going to go through the next generation, some of the episodes that I found that Picard interacts with kids, and we're going to just chat about these things. I'd love your input, everyone who's in chat. If you are listening to the recording, feel free to tweet me at the Star Dispatch. As you listen, I would love to hear what you have to say. So, very first episode of TNG, season 1, episode 1, Encounter at Farpoint. Right off the bat, we get Picard asking Riker to keep him from making an ass of himself around kids. So hopefully these sounders work. Let's see here.
Special favor.
Anything, sir?
Using the same strength you showed with Captain DeSoto, I would appreciate it if you could keep me from making an ass of myself with children.
Sir?
I'm not a family man, Riker, and yet Starfleet has given me a ship with children aboard.
Yes, sir.
And I don't feel comfortable with children. But since a captain needs an image of geniality, you're to see that's what I project.
All right. So right off the bat, he admits it. He's like, I'm not good with kids. Help, please help. I don't know how to kids. What is this? Why? What? So he's in charge of the ship that is basically the cruise ship in space with all the families. And this is after, I think it was 22 years on the Stargazer that had like no kids. It was just professional working Starfleet people. So he's just Not he doesn't have the practice yet. In season 1, episode 12, data lore, we get the the moment that everyone loves to quote, "Shut up, Wesley." And in this episode, Wesley kind of understands that lore is posing his data, and he's trying to convince people, I guess, that maybe he's not who he's making himself out to be. So I'm going to play this little clip from Data Lore.
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but
Shut up, Wesley!
Lieutenant, pick a good security team and let me know what he does.
Aye, sir. Shut up, Wesley?
Doctor.
and since I am finished here, sir, may I point out that
Shut up, Wesley.
that everything that I have said would have been listened to if it came from an adult officer. Request permission to return to my quarters, sir.
Agreed. Doctor, go with him.
You're putting me off the bridge.
I'm asking you to keep an eye on your son during all of this, Doctor.
Yee. So at first glance, that seems a little iffy. Like, Beverly is a little offended. Like, really? You're sending me to my room too? What? But watching it a couple times, I realized that he's kind of being protective in a way. We know that his best friend was Wesley's dad. So he has a kind of protectiveness over Wesley a little bit. But it also ends up that Beverly and Wesley being together lets them work together to figure out the problem and save the day. So even though Wesley makes that good point that he wouldn't be treated that way if he were an adult crewman, I think that Picard learned a little bit from that, because obviously he dismissed him and then he turned out to be right. So oopsies. It's a little humbling. We have another episode, season 1, episode 16, called When the Bow Breaks. This one is where a civilization ends up infertile and they kidnap a bunch of kids from the Enterprise. And Picard, during this episode, he is staunchly defending these kidnapped children. He works really, really hard to get them back to their families. We do see something I found interesting where he has more experience, I guess, or he works better with the older kids than the younger ones. He seems, in the visual, his face, Patrick Stewart's an amazing actor, obviously. His face is just, he's so uncomfortable when having to deal with the little ones and the affection from them. So he is furious when the kids are kidnapped, and he comforts the parents because they have this meeting, and the parents are saying, "Oh my God, what do we do? My kids!" Obviously, like, that's understandable. So he comforts them.
I won't insult you by pretending that any of this will be easy. But I can tell you that the Enterprise will not leave them behind.
Yep. So he knows that he is the leader of this ship. The children are just as important of crew members as the officers. The civilization that kidnaps them, they try to get Picard to go in to convince the kids to call off their protest strike. And he talks to them just a little bit. And I'm going to play this clip and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Hi, Captain Picard. Hi, Captain.
Sir, I knew you'd come.
It's not over yet, Wesley.
I think I figured out their computer controls, sir, but I'm not sure. It's a much different system than ours.
Good, Wesley. Now.
Captain,
Yes, Harry.
if something happens and you have to leave us here, will you tell my dad that I'm sorry that I made him angry and that I miss him?
You will tell him that, Harry. And I will tell him how much I admire his son.
Hello, Alexandra.
Hi.
the rest of that clip is just this really light, loving music. She reaches her arms up to get picked up and she gives him a hug and he's just kind of, I don't know about this, but he accepts it after a minute. And it's just really sweet. But I thought it was interesting because he treats Harry like a person. He encourages him. Um, but then the littlest one, he's just really awkward. But the way that the episode edited it to have this nice little music in it is just, it's very sweet. And then at the end, we see after all is said and done, Wesley brings the little girl back onto the bridge because she wants to thank him for bringing her back to her mother. It's so sweet. So I'm going to play this clip and then we will talk about it afterwards.
Wesley?
Sorry, Captain. She just wanted to thank you for bringing her home to her mother.
Thank you.
Come on.
So at the end there, we get a little bit of Dodo music because she hugs him. She gives him a flower. She hugs him. And then when he stands up and turns around, her stuffed animal that looks incredibly like a triple to me is stuck to the back of his uniform. And nobody tells him. Nobody tells him. It reminds me of the animated series episode where they have Kirk as a jerk on his back. Nobody tells him. So he gets a little bit of goofy music there, but it's really sweet. He does accept the hug and he does have that kind of blank face of I'm uncomfortable with this, but I need to do this because it's part of my job. So, okay. So that is still all season 1. We get a lot of him dealing with kids. And then after that, we don't really see a whole lot of that, like close interactions. I'm probably missing things because there's no way I could go through the entirety of The Next Generation and pick out every single clip. So if I miss something, please let me know. I think it would be interesting to fill in the blanks here too. Husher315 in chat says, without Wes, Picard would have remained really cold towards kids. Wesley was such an impact. I agree. In season 2, we have an episode called Pen Pals, and this is where Data picks up a transmission from seemingly nowhere, and it turns out to be a little alien girl who needs saved. Her civilization is basically exploding from volcanoes, and everything's bad. And there's a lot of Prime Directive hubbub here of do we, don't we? And after... Well, initially, he cuts Data off from talking to this girl. He says, you can't do this. We have to not be involved. But then he hears this child's voice and he gives in. This child is begging and pleading for help. And I think that shows a little bit of his growth because, it's really hard to ignore a little kid who is asking for help and is legitimately in trouble. Pit Baster says, as awkward as some West moments seem to be now, it really was a great on-screen relationship for its time. That's a really good point. I know we talk a lot about in DS9 how Captain Sisko and his son Jake were a really, really pivotal on-screen relationship. But I'm sure there were just as many people who saw Wes and Picard as influential to their own lives. In season 4, we get the episode Family, episode 2, and this is where Picard goes back to his home of Chateau Picard in France, and excuse me, he jokes with his nephew. When he first shows up, he's walking to the chateau and he hears a noise, and I'm going to play this clip for y'all and we'll talk about it right after.
All right, whoever you are, I can hear you. Oh, good Lord. A highwayman.
A what?
Highwayman. It's a robber who attacks travelers, but none have been reported in this vicinity for centuries.
But I'm not a robber.
Oh. I'm much relieved, sir.
I know who you are.
Then you have the advantage.
You're my nephew, Jean-Luc, from the Starship Enterprise.
Then you must be my Uncle Rene.
I'm not your uncle. It's the other way around.
Too bad. I rather enjoyed the idea.
It's so cute. And through the episode, he keeps up that joke of calling him Uncle Rene, which adorable. Which there's a couple things about this clip. When you're watching it, he puts up his hands when Rene comes up. And rewatching Picard recently, I noticed that this is exactly what he does when he meets Kestra in the episode Nepenthe. So that's kind of neat how he puts up his hands and surrenders to the child. The other cool thing about this episode is his nephew Rene is the same actor that comes back to play a young Jean-Luc Picard in Rascals. So I think it's neat that they have that kind of little carryover there. Just a little tangent. So his brother Robert is very staunchly like set in the past, doesn't like technology, doesn't want a replicator in the house, thinks that life is too convenient. But Rene keeps saying, I love space. I want to be a starship captain when I grow up. And Robert's just like, don't encourage him. That's not what he wants for his kid. He didn't want that for his brother either. So there's this exchange where Robert says, like, you can raise your kids how you want, but let me raise my son how I want to. And I think this little interaction, along with all the rest of this amazing episode, they influence each other a little bit there. Because when Picard goes to leave, Rene says he wants to be a starship captain again, and Picard says, well, you might decide to do something else when you get older. But then at the same time, after that, Rene is outside at night looking at the stars, and Robert has come around to let him dream. So that's really sweet. So he's getting a little bit of that influence of dealing with kids and interacting with kids and advice about kids from his brother, even though they just fought in a vineyard mud pit. Really good episode. We have a season 5 episode 5 called Disaster. And this one you might remember because Picard gets trapped in a turbo lift with 3 kids. Yeah, like worst nightmare for Picard, right? Not only does he get trapped in a turbo lift, but his ankle's broken. So he's in a crap ton of pain, but he's also he's so out of his element. So the first thing we get in this episode is the introduction of the kids by Counselor Troy to Picard, and then O'Brien makes kind of a funny little quip at the end.
Captain, I'd like to introduce you to the winners of the primary school science fair. This is Marissa, Jay Gordon, and Patterson. They're here for their tour.
Hello.
Can we see the battle bridge in Torpedo Bay?
No, I'm afraid not. But we will be visiting the hydroponics and the astrophysics laboratories.
I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time.
Well, if you'll come with me.
I'm not sure who to feel sorry for, the captain or the kids.
Oh boy. So everyone on the ship knows, like, this is not a good situation. Like, why are you making the captain do this with the kids? Oh my goodness. But then they get in the turbo lift, and that's when everything kind of falls to pieces, literally.
I want you to know that we're very proud of our science fair winners. Perhaps some of you will choose to pursue a career in Starfleet. Well then, what did you do for your science projects?
I planted radishes in the special dirt, and they came up all weird.
See, that's very, very commendable. And you?
An analysis of the lifespan of the swarming moths on Gonal 4. They only live for 20 hours, then they all die.
How interesting. And you? We're falling!
Ah! Everybody's screaming, everything's bad. So that's not a good situation. But it's really cute how he tries to engage them before everything goes bad, just talking about what they did for the science fair. At the very end, before things start falling, he tries to get Marissa, the oldest girl, to talk about what she did for the science fair. And she's just very, very shy this whole time up till here. And by the end, we realize that she's probably not as shy as we think. So after this, we get, he's sitting on the floor, his ankle's broken, and these kids will not stop crying. One of them is just catastrophizing that everybody's dead, we're all gonna die. I think any one of us in this situation would just be like, this is a lot. Like, what do I do now? So he tries to get them to stop crying. It's quite funny. I mean, not if you're in the situation, but watching it after the fact.
Are you children all right?
Bridge, this is Picard. This is the captain. Does anyone read me?
Why don't they answer?
I don't know.
They're all dead.
They're not dead. Communication is down, that's all.
We're going to die too.
We most certainly are not.
Yeah, so he tries, bless him. He's trying so hard to get them to just, be comforted a little bit. But he's also acting on instinct in this moment. And right now his instinct is definitely not used to being stuck in a tiny place with 3 crying children. So I can't blame him for what he says next. He gets quite a little bit testy, and he acts like these kids are Starfleet officers, the way that he speaks to them.
Now listen to me. No one here is going to die. The bridge will be sending a rescue party as soon as possible. So, I want you all to stop crying. Everything is going to be all right.
Oof. I feel bad for him in that situation. I really do, because I don't think I could do any better. But good on him. He somehow gets it in his head to get these kids on his side by making them Starfleet officers. He gives them little pips on their neck, and he gives Marissa the first officer status because she's the oldest. And right after this, she just starts perking up. It's almost like she needed to feel important, maybe, to be in charge. Maybe she thrives on being in charge. He gives Jay Gordon, the middle one, the science officer status. And then we get the littlest one uh, asking to be an officer too.
Can I be an officer too?
Well, let me see. Your science project involved radishes, did it not?
Yes, sir.
Then I shall appoint you my executive officer in charge of radishes.
I think that's just really cute. Executive officer in charge of radishes. It shows that he was paying attention. And that's really important when you're around kids, is to just be present, to make them feel like they're not being ignored. So he gets the little one to also have a little pip, and eventually he leads them out of the turbo shaft by climbing, and they all sing Frere Jacques together as they're climbing. And I think that's genius because it keeps their minds preoccupied so their bodies can stick to the task. Because yeah, they're tied together with a cable, but not very well. And obviously, he's got a broken ankle trying to climb up a ladder. That's not good. And if one of them falls, it's going to be really bad. So he finds this way to get them to kind of forget about it, to not look down, to just sing through it. And once they get out of the turbo lift shaft, the little girl, Marissa, she leans in to hug him. And for once, he accepts that physical intimacy without looking awkward. He seems genuinely not only relieved that they're out of the danger of at least that little part of the experience, but also just, I think he probably needed a hug right then after all of that. And the little boys are a little bit farther away from him, so he ends up like grabbing and shaking their hands. And then after all is said and done, there's a scene at the end where the three of the kids come onto the bridge and they present him with a plaque to thank him for getting through all of that. And at this point, he doesn't even seem hesitant, which I thought was really neat, just compared to the beginning of the episode. He seems very relaxed. He accepts this with a smile. He's paying very close attention to what they're saying. One of them says, "I made the back piece," and he turns it over and looks at it, and it's very precious. But then in the beginning, they asked to see the battle bridge, and he's like, no, we're not doing that. And at this point, he says, "I still owe you that tour. We're going to go see the battle bridge." So I think it's cool that he really came around on at least these three children. So I'm going to catch up with chat a little bit here. Draft says, "The fun thing is to compare this episode to the one where Tuvok is stuck on a planet with a crashed shuttle and three little kids, two different approaches." I do not remember that episode at all, and now I want to go and rewatch both of them because that sounds fascinating. And Galaxy Star Queen 77 points out that giving the little one the job of radishes shows how much he grew just in this one episode. I agree. I think that's a really neat example. And that is one of the big ones. But another big one that we all probably have watched a million times and cried a bunch of tears over is season 5, episode 25, The Inner Light. This one's fun because Jean-Luc Picard has family. He has his own kids in this one. Granted, it's kind of like a dream. Do they really exist? They exist in his mind. That's good enough, right? Even though the whole thing takes place over, 25 minutes in real time, he experiences the entirety of the rest of his life through a vision, I suppose. An interesting thing here is when he picks up the Resican flute, one of the first things we hear him playing is Frere Jacques. And he played that, 20 episodes earlier? Well, he didn't play it. He sang it with the little kids in the turbo lift. So it's really neat to see that little tiny bit of continuity. And in this dream world, he starts a family with his wife. His daughter ends up taking after him in a big way. And we see that at the naming ceremony of his son.
Seems like only yesterday we had Mirabor's naming ceremony. Go on.
I remember. I was so nervous, I was afraid that I would drop her.
Let's try it.
Now look at the little lady.
Oh, she's no lady. Tromping through the hills with you all day, digging up those soil samples you insist upon collecting. Now she's her father's daughter.
I always believed that I didn't need children to complete my life. Now I couldn't imagine life without them.
Hello? What? Right there. I think that says it all. He has a daughter and then he has a son, and he admits that now he's the kid guy. He's changed. And this episode's really great because not only do we get to see him admit to that, but we get to see a bit of his parenting style too. There's a scene where he's talking to his daughter when she's a little bit older, and he kind of laments his parenting style a little bit just based on the situation at hand.
Perhaps I should have filled your head with trivial concerns, games and toys and clothes.
I don't think you mean that.
No, I don't. Just saddens me to see you burdened with the knowledge of things you can't change.
I have a feeling that a lot of people feel that way in our modern times, just for their kids and kids that they know they want the best for them. They want a long life for them, and they get to know the weight of the world all too well. Another thing about this episode that I thought is really cool is Patrick Stewart's real life son, Daniel, plays his son. It plays Picards' son in this episode, or Cammon's son in this episode. And there's quite a bit of conversation here that I think he learned a lesson from his brother about raising kids. So I will start off here, and I want to point out that we get the Star Trek Picard flute theme in this scene, which I think is really, really cool. So if you want to listen for that, here you go.
He loves playing. He's quite good at it, don't you think?
And he loves doing a lot of things. Last week, all he wanted to do was be a botanist. The week before that, a sculptor. Wish he could find some focus in his life.
I think he has. Maybe you should talk to him.
Patai?
Ah, I love that flute theme. It's grown on me so much. Excuse me. So Picard, or Cammon, wishes that Patai, his son, would find some focus in his life. And he brings Patai over and has a little conversation with him where he kind of pressures him a little bit about, hey, maybe you should pick something and stick to it.
I'm leaving school.
Leaving school? No, you're not.
I want to concentrate on my music. That's what I care about.
Well, last year all you cared about was mathematics. The year before that, botany.
But through it all, there was my music. I think you know that, Father. This is the life I want.
Well, we'll discuss it.
Thank you, Father.
Mm.
There at the end, just that grumpy little But his wife is surprised that he gives in to this so easily. And this was his reply.
Music is what he wants. Why should I stand in his way?
Yeah, he knows. You got to just support your kids in what they want to do, even if it's not what you want them to do. And it sounds like they've supported Bataille through literally every whim he's that he's wanted to study, which I think is nice for Picard because he likes learning too. So his son at least wanted to keep learning different things. Yeah. Then later on in the episode, we see Grandpa Picard. I think so cute. I cannot believe that we get to see this scene. I don't think there's anything else like it in Star Trek with Picard, at least. So the audio on this is a little weird because he's on the floor playing with his grandkids. So it's a little bit of grunting. So just use your imagination.
Gotcha. Now I gotcha. Hey.
Some children are certainly making a lot of noise in here.
You shouldn't be outside so long. It's damaging, you know that.
I'm wearing plenty of your skin protector.
How about you, young man? Do you wear your skin protector outdoors? You do? Good boy.
How cute is that? So the reason that he's talking about the skin protectant is their son is getting really bad and he doesn't want them to, get skin cancer, which I agree. Make sure you wear your sunscreen, wear protective gear if you need to. Just be safe. Be safe. So eventually, if you've seen the episode, you know how it ends. He comes back to the Enterprise. He realizes it was all kind of a dream, a simulation, but he still has that skill of the flute. But I had a thought while I was watching this. He never really chooses to have a family, at least in the episodes and series that we see him in after this. And I wonder if this might be why he chose not to have a family, quote unquote, in real life, because he did experience that already in 25 minutes. But I think he learned some lessons from that as well that he took back to the Enterprise, because in the next season, Season 6, Episode 6, called True Q. This is the one where a girl named Amanda Rogers comes on the Enterprise, and Picard is introduced to her, and she says she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. And I think this sounds like a lesson that he got maybe from his son Bataille.
Welcome to the Enterprise, Miss Rogers. I'm delighted to have you on board.
Thank you, sir.
And congratulations. I understand that you were selected for this internship out of hundreds of applicants.
Yes, sir. I still can't believe they chose me. There were lots of other people with better records.
Her transcript is very impressive. She's done honors work in neurobiology, plasma dynamics, and echo regeneration. I'd say that's pretty well-rounded.
Well, that's a nice way of saying that I haven't decided what I'm going to do with my life.
I've arranged to have you work in all the major departments while you're here. And I'm willing to bet that by the time it's over, you'll have a pretty good idea what field you're interested in.
Or at least what field you're not interested in.
Ha. So he doesn't give her crap like he did a little bit with his own son Bataille. He just encourages her to follow what she wants to do. And then in this episode, Q comes back because apparently Amanda Rogers may or may not be a Q. And Picard argues with Q to allow her to choose her own life path. And things go really badly because Q says, well, if she's not fully Q, we're going to kill her. And also we killed her parents. So Picard, he takes on this difficult task of telling Amanda all of this, like major info dump to this young woman, just so that she can make an informed choice about if she wants to go to the Q continuum with Q or if she wants to do what she wants to do. And the rest of the episode doesn't really have to do with what we're talking about today, but it is a neat little episode if you are interested in Q, since he will pop back up in season 2, at least from the previews that we've seen. And Jaden137 in chat is right. Rascals is next, where he's a kid again. Season 6, episode 7, called Rascals. This one, a transporter accident makes Picard, Guinan, Keiko, and Ro come back in their child version of their bodies, but they still have all their memories and all of their brain function of their adult forms. And in this episode, I thought it was interesting because Picard, he seems to really try to ignore the fact that he's in a kid's body until Guinan talks to him and suggests that they act like the children that they look like to try to get out of the situation that they're stuck in, because the ship's been taken over by Ferengi, everything's bad, and they get stuck in the schoolroom with a bunch of the rest of the kids. And during that, he gets Alexander, who is Worf's son, to help them. And I thought this was really interesting because he treated Alexander like another crewmate, kind of like he did in Disaster with the kids on the turbo lift. He gave him an assignment, and Alexander was very enthusiastic to help, even though it was based on them being kids. So I thought that was cool. Another couple cute little trivia things in this episode. It was directed by Adam Nimoy, who is Leonard Nimoy's son. So we get the children episode by the son of our our Star Trek royalty of Spock, but also the same actor who played Picard's nephew Rene comes back in this episode as young Jean-Luc Picard. And I didn't know this at all because, one, he's a little bit older, but also his hair's totally different. In the first one, he's got like this giant bowl cut. This one, it's a bit up. So it's pretty interesting. The next episode I would like to talk about is called Bloodlines. This one is from the next season, season 7, episode 22. And in this episode, they come across a young man who is said to be Picards' son that he had with an old girlfriend. But it turns out that the Ferengi, again, messed with this guy's DNA to make it appear like he was Picards' son, but he wasn't really. But the cool thing about this episode is he really steps up, even though he's not sure that it's true. And then they quote unquote prove it's true with DNA testing, but then the DNA testing is wrong because the Ferengi are on some stuff. He still steps up and tries to help out here. There's quite a bit of relevant dialogue here. First, he talks with Beverly, and she gives him some advice about being a parent.
He puts up so many barriers. I have no idea what is underneath.
Keep in mind, he's had 20 years to be angry that his father wasn't there. It's going to take some time to get over those feelings. But I do think it's possible.
Perhaps. But surely it would be wrong to force the issue. My sense is that he is a very independent young man. Perhaps it would be best if I left him alone. Let him come to me if he wants to.
Maybe you're right. But I think you should consider this. Are you doing the best thing for Jason, or what's easiest for you?
Good question. And here's part 2.
I've been thinking about what you said the other day, and, I think you were right. I had convinced myself that Jason didn't want me to reach out to him.
I don't think anyone is born knowing how to be a parent. You just sort of figure it out as you go. But the one quality that tends to be a requirement for parenthood is patience.
Well, I'm not sure that that is going to be enough. I found out that Jason has a criminal record. It's nothing very serious. It's only petty theft and so forth. But I can't help feeling that if I had been part of his life, then he wouldn't be so troubled now.
Maybe. But why waste time blaming yourself for not being there? Just be here for him now.
And be patient.
and be patient.
Be patient. Remember that for later. So he ends up talking with this man, Jason, who he at the time believes is his son.
Jason, isn't there some way that I can be a father to you? My own father and I were estranged. He wanted me to stay at home and tend the vineyards, and I wanted to join Starfleet. And he died before we could come to terms with that. And I regretted that all of my life. I don't want the same thing to happen to you and me.
So there's the big thing about why he might be a little bit shy when it comes to kids. He didn't have the best relationship with his father, so he doesn't want to be the same person his father was to other people. But then Jason reveals that, oh, hey, I'm a criminal. You don't want to get to know me. And Picard's like, I know.
I know all about your troubles with the Kamen authorities.
You do?
Doesn't make any difference, Jason. You're still my son. And like it or not, I'm your father. I don't know what that means. You know, it means something. There's some connection.
Yeah.
But one thing is clear. You'll never look at your hairline again in the same way.
Aw, he makes him laugh. That's the thing. You got to use the humor. You got to get people laughing. It helps break the ice. So I think it's neat that even though it turns out that it wasn't actually his son, he's still very kind to him, and he tried, even though things were really, really awkward, like really awkward, even more awkward than some of the other situations with kids. And this was a young man, not actually a kid, but it was his child. At least he thought so. And this comes back up later in Picard when he is dealing with Elnor. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. The last TNG episode I would like to talk about is simply one little quote from the Pegasus, which is season 7, episode 12. And you will know this one because it's Captain Picard Day.
Captain Picard Day?
Oh, yes, it's for the children. I'm I'm a role model.
I'm sure you are.
I'm sure you are. The face he makes after that, adorable. So it takes him 7 seasons to get remotely comfortable with kids, even though he still doesn't want them to have a Captain Picard Day. He also, in the family episode, he didn't want them to have a parade for him, so that might just be part of that. He doesn't want people to make a fuss over him. But we get to see the fact that the kids all still really look up to him, and they're so excited to just celebrate him for who he is. So we know that he means a lot to a lot of people. There are a couple other TNG episodes that I didn't get a chance to review to refresh in my brain, but I was wondering. He does defend Data's child, Lol. I think that might count for something in the whole Picard and kids sphere of topic influencing here. And then all the times that he encouraged Wesley. I feel like that's just a running theme throughout The Next Generation, so it's hard to pinpoint an exact episode. He had so many interactions with him, both good and bad. So if you have any good examples of that, I would love to hear them. So moving on to Star Trek Picard, we see him many, many years later. He is significantly older. At this point, he's pretty much Grandpa Picard that we saw before, but he is disheartened. We don't see him crawling around on the floor laughing with kids. We see him just kind of languishing, being lonely, being defeated. Things have happened, things have knocked him down, and all of a sudden, this young woman shows up at his chateau. He has no idea what's going on. She's freaking out. She's talking about people trying to kill her. She killed them. She's got a bloody wound on her head. And somehow she's evaded his home's protection network. She never showed up on the sensor, so he didn't even have warning that she was coming. But he still tries to calm her down, and he still takes her in, serves her tea, really pays attention to her, listens to her, tells her that they're going to figure it out. She's going to be safe. And then she bolts, she leaves, and they meet up later again, and she's freaking out again because if you suddenly realized that you were an android secretly and your life was a lie, you would probably freak out a little bit too. But he realizes at this point that she is Data's daughter, and he comforts her, and in a way that I thought was just very, very sweet. He compares her to the orchids that she remembers her father making and says that she is very special, something lovingly and deliberately created. And I thought that was just really beautiful. And unfortunately, we know how Dodge meets her end. Don't want to talk about it. Still too soon. So we'll move on to the episode Absolute Candor, which if you are listening to this live or later on today, this Strange New Pod Discord has been doing a Star Trek rewatch watch along, and that's the episode we're going to do tonight. So I'm super excited to rewatch this in full. We get Picard as an older man interacting with a young version of Elnor.
You haven't stopped talking about Admiral Picard since he left. Can't you find something to say to him?
What did you bring me?
What did I bring you? Well, now let me see. The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Enjoy.
You're making the Admiral uncomfortable, Elnor. He dislikes displays of emotion. He's not overly fond of children.
Not at all. Someday, I may get used to the way of absolute candor.
Why don't you like children?
Because they're demanding, distracting, and interfere with duty and pleasure alike.
My feelings are hurt. I actually did think you were fond of me.
Correct. I like you very much.
And I love that the absolute candor of the Qowat Milat is coming out here, where he is now comfortable enough to agree on the fact that, children are a lot, but also to be upfront with Elnor and just tell him, I like you. You're a pretty cool kid. And then we get to see him play fencing with Elnor, and a very big change from the early Picard we saw. Elnor snuggles up to him while he's reading a book to him. And he was always very hesitant about those displays of affection. And so now he's a little bit older and wiser in this scene, and he lets him. And I dare say he has fun and enjoys just spending time with this young boy. Which unfortunately, he gets the bad news from the Federation about Mars, and he has to split. He tells the Qowat Milat to apologize to Elnor that they didn't finish their fencing lesson, but he'll be back soon. But we know he didn't. He didn't get to come back, and it's unfortunate. He wanted to find a better place for Elnor than to be living with this sisterhood of nuns. But for some reason, they never were able to find a good home for them, for him. And that makes me wonder, why did Elnor have to stay with them? What were the qualifications for a suitable family or home for Elnor? What made him special that he couldn't just stay with any random Romulan family? Did he need some sort of protection? Did he need training? What was up with that? What's up with that? Um, so that's just a little tangent there, leading into possibly season 2 and 3 of Picard. We'll see if that leads anywhere. Um, but later on, when he goes back to see Elnor as a young man, he asks Elnor for his help and protection. And I have to wonder if the lessons that he learned from his fake son, Jason, being, how do you say, not knowing him for like 20 years of his life, if that helped guide him here when he interacted with a young Elnor.
I had a friend called Data.
It's usually a sad story.
He died. He gave his life to save mine. And I have missed him ever since.
Did you ever miss me?
Of course I did.
Continue.
Well, recently I've learned that Data, this is complicated, that Data had 2 offspring. And one of them, her name was Daj, was murdered in front of me. The other one, I believe, is in serious danger, and I have to find her before the Tal Shiar do.
The Tal Shiar?
Yes.
And this other sister, is she an android?
Mm-hmm.
You told me stories about Data. He had an orange cat named Spot.
That's right.
I've still never seen a cat.
Well, if you come with us, you might just run across 1 or 2 of them.
All right, I'm going to pause it there because we really need Elnor to meet a cat. Y'all agree with me? Because it's such a shame that he didn't get to meet a cat yet. Like, how did they put that in there and they just didn't give Elnor a cat? I'm a crazy cat lady. I love cats. Got 2 cats. Just I love them. Just let Elnor meet a cat, please. But as they continue this conversation, Elnor kind of grills Picard.
Why do you need me?
Because I failed to protect her sister.
But you don't know where she is or if she's even alive.
No.
What about the man who built her?
It's just a guess.
Are you being pursued?
Likely. Anticipated, actually.
All that is why you need someone. Why do you need me?
Because I'm an old man and you're a young one, and you're strong. Zani told me that you are one of the best fighters that she has ever seen. It seems to me that my quest has the appropriate criterion. Will you come with me? Will you bind your sword to my quest?
Now that you have use for me? Now that I have value to you? You left me on my own, old man.
I never meant to.
I see no reason not to do the same.
Elnor!
Yikes. That had to hurt. And it was like in the Bloodlines episode where he thought, well, maybe I have to let Jason come to me. And Beverly's like, are you doing that for your comfort? And here he's coming to Elnor and experiencing the discomfort right off the bat. He's not waiting. He's not denying it. He's interacting with Elnor for good or bad, whatever happens. So that's a little bit of the interactions in the beginning between Elnor and Picard. We see how they bridge this, I guess, 18, 20, 15, whatever, however many year gap it was between the first time we see them together and this time. And then later on, I'm going to just jump ahead to the episode Nepenthe. We get a totally different interaction with kids. He visits the home of the Troy Rikers, and their daughter Kestra meets him and Soji in the woods on the way up to the house. And this is so reminiscent of Family, where he greets his nephew Renee with his arms up. Even though, well, of course, Renee didn't have a bow, an arrow pointed at him, but he still jokes. He surrenders to the kids. He lets them feel like they're in power. He gives his power to them in a way to get them, I guess, on his side. In that episode, we also see a picture of him holding baby Thaddeus Troy Riker. That is, I'm almost positive that's photoshopped together. But it's really neat to see that in this interim time, after the next generation, that he did get comfortable with children, at least with his friends' kids, to be able to hold a baby and not look like he's gonna be afraid to drop it, like he said with his own daughter back in the Inner Light. But we also get him having to deal with this girl Soji, who he believes is Data's daughter, and she doesn't know him. She has no idea what's going on. Her whole life up to this point, she's just going through an existential crisis like crazy right now. And Riker gives him a little bit of advice.
Now you're dealing with a teenager, more or less. That can be an extremely humbling experience. Frankly, I'm not sure you're up to it.
Perhaps I'm not.
There you go. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Excuse me. So, baby steps. Yep. So what is it about this interaction with Soji that he's not being able to rely on his previous interactions with any of the teenagers that he dealt with before? We learn that Soji is basically like 3 years old in reality, but she's got all the memories of her childhood, and she's basically a young woman at this point, or what Riker says is a teenager. So what is it about her that is blocking him? And I have to wonder if a little bit of his brain thingy that they allude to in this episode, or in this series prior to this, if that's blocking his judgment. Don't know one way or the other. That's just conjecture on my part. But he does have the experience with teenagers and their stubbornness, like we saw with Bataille. So it's just interesting. So then he he kind of taunts Soji a little bit, which is another little like, ooh, I don't know why he did that thing.
You bring me to this beautiful place, surround me with warm, friendly people and good food, and
Torture you? Destroy you? Yeah, you're right. All this is an elaborate plot. I wouldn't trust any of this if I were you.
Whoa! Hey! Hey!
All you had to say is dinner is served. All right?
She could have broken me in half. I suppose I should be encouraged that she held back. Baby steps.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Baby steps. So why did he act like that? This is one of those things when it comes to the new series that they haven't been around long enough for me to rewatch them 800 times and develop the onion layers of understanding the deeper meanings within things. So I would love feedback on any of my opinions here. One last thing in the episode Nepenthe is Troy gives him some advice, and this almost echoes what Beverly told him in the past.
What I need to be.
You need to be Jean-Luc Picard. Compassionate, patient, curious.
Yep, patience. There it is. They just keep saying, hey, be yourself. Yourself is the one that's good with kids. Don't put up these blocks where you have to be a certain person or act like a certain thing. It'll come to you, even if you got to learn it as you go. So that's all I really wanted to cover with the episodes themselves. I did want to just quickly go over the fact that just with some other captains that we get to experience with kids in Star Trek, the universe of Star Trek, we never see Picard interacting with a baby. Like, I think the youngest we see him interact with is the little girl in the kidnapping episode. But we never actually see even in the naming ceremony of his son, he's not picking up the child and holding the child. He's standing next to his wife who is holding the kid. But then we see him interacting with his grandkid, but he's not like holding him and being affectionate. He's playing. But in Deep Space Nine, we see Cisco with kids all the time, and he's picking them up and hugging them and just being super affectionate. And obviously he has his own son that he's very affectionate with as well. But that's a big difference there in parenting between the two. Obviously they were very different captains as well. But when it comes to Captain Kirk, I don't think he was much better when it came to dealing with kids. A lot of the Star Trek original series episodes that have kids in them are considered to be some of the quote unquote worst episodes of Star Trek. He is not great interacting with Charlie X in that, beginning episode. In Miri, he's a little creepy. In The Children Shall Lead, he's a little more hands-off. It's just, there's not a whole lot of evidence that we could examine when it comes to Kirk and kids, as far as how he learns about them. I think Janeway did pretty good when it comes to her dealing with kids. She had kids on her ship that she basically rescued from the Borg. So there's a lot of evidence for her, but she was kind of naturally just good with kids from the start. I can't recall Captain Archer ever interacting with kids. Please tell me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've done an Enterprise rewatch. But as far as, thinking about Captain Archer, interacting with kids is not one of the first things I think about. And when it comes to Star Trek Discovery, there's a scene where Burnham gets to interact with Book's nephew, and she takes him to meet Linus so they can peel off his skin. And I absolutely love that scene because I feel like Sonequa Martin Green's like internal mom comes out, the way that she looks at this child and smiles at him with just this beaming heart of hers, and it's just lovely. So we don't get a whole lot of interaction with kids there, but we do see that she's kind of a natural when it comes to kids too. All right, so that's going to be it for today. I hope that in all of my ramblings and clips that maybe you've learned something. Maybe we can take away the fact that it takes practice to interact with kids. No matter who you are, you're not born being a parent or being a role model. It's just something you kind of learn as you go. And that's okay. It's okay to be awkward because we've all been there. We're all a little awkward sometimes. We all make mistakes. We all get through it. And we'll get to see, hopefully, in Picard season 2 and 3, that hopefully we'll get a little bit more interaction with Elnor. See Picard's little parenting quips come out there. I don't know if we'll get to see the Troy Rikers again, but gosh, I would love to see Kester again. She was a great, great character. I'm assuming we'll get to see Soji, and we'll get to see the quote-unquote children of the synths that Picard might adopt. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to this next season of Star Trek Picard coming up soon. And I want to thank Strange New Pod for having me on the Captain Picard Week Festival. I love festival. Even though, thankfully, there's no Landrew in this one. No pain sticks for us. So I hope you all have a good day. Thank you for listening, and live long and prosper.